Good afternoon, everyone. It seems up to this point, everyone has been up here entirely on purpose. However, I might be up here almost entirely on accident. So I'm going to just tell you a story today, and there's not a lot of numbers involved. And hopefully we're going to take this walk together. So this all started when I came to the Klamath. So I joined the Happy Camp Ranger District in the fall of 2018. And as soon as I took my new position, I heard about this mysterious Mother's Day flower show. And I thought, oh, what is this? And I found out that it was this wonderful display and collection of all of the native wildflowers from throughout Northern California. And so it was fall when I had arrived, and it was winter when I was learning my plants, and I studied the keys, and I looked at the pictures, and I read the books, and then all the flowers bloomed, and I had no idea what anything was. So I did not want to be the flop at the flower show who did not show up with any good flowers, which led me to a 2-day flower grab of intensity where I drove rapidly and ran from the car to throw flowers into my vases, really not knowing what anything was. And here I have a picture on the left, and this is State Highway 96. Has anybody ever driven on that? Okay, so this is a state highway, and it was one of the roads that I was rapidly driving, trying to collect as many flowers as possible, and I stopped in this ditch, and I grabbed everything I saw. There were a couple monkey flowers in there, too. And as you can see, there's this white flower growing all in the bottom of the ditch line. It was almost monoculture. It was a perennial riparian area, and I thought, well, this is a weed, but I'm going to collect it anyway. So I threw it in my vase, and off I went. Well, 2 days later was the flower show. I showed up with all of my flowers, and they rapidly got mixed in with everyone else's, and it was a very exciting time, and I was spending most of my time walking around trying to learn all the flowers I didn't know. But I did notice that this one particular plant kept moving around. So I put it on the weeds table, thinking, maybe it's a weed, it looks a little weedy, which was a little prejudice of me. And then at one point I saw it on the perennial table, and then at one point I saw it on the annuals table. It was never on the woodies table. And I thought, okay, I still don't know what that is. And Julie's like, do you know what this is? And I'm like, no. And so I saw you carrying it around a couple of times as it moved from place to place. And I think it got to the very end, and it was the last plant that didn't have a label on it. And I go over and I talk to Julie, who has the Jepson out, and she says, I think it's Nasturtium gambli. And I said, okay, sounds great to me. I thought it was a weed. And so it goes on the table, and off we go. Well, 2 days later, I get an email from Julie, and she says, hey, I was talking to my friend at the Fish and Wildlife Service, and it turns out that gambli is a federally listed species. And I thought, oh no. And I flashed back to the side of the state highway, and I thought, and then the other option was that perhaps it had never been found in California before. So go out and get some more, right? Let's figure out what this species is. At this time, too, given that we weren't entirely sure what it was, we reached out to Dr. Al-Shabazz at the Missouri Botanical Garden, who wrote the treatment for nasturtiums in the Jepson and is also the mustard family expert. And we said, hey, here's this description of this plant that we have. Here's some pictures. We're not quite sure what it is. And I'm thinking, oh no. So I also sent an email out to Caltrans, and I'm like, hey, I might have accidentally found a federally listed species in red clay. Sorry. And they said, let's take a field trip. So, lo and behold, we have this wonderful interagency field trip out to the field with some GPS coordinates, and we had a whole bunch of stops along the route, and this was a couple of them. Well, on the route, we found a second population in a different drainage ditch right on the highway. Actually, at an entirely different area. It's about a half mile to the east of the first population. And if you've ever been to Happy Camp, this is only like 4 miles outside of town. So it's basically urban. So Dr. Al-Shabazz writes us back and he says, well, it could be a couple of different things. It could be Nasturtium gambli, or it could be Nasturtium microphyllum. And we're like, okay, well, I'll get some more samples. At this point, I'm feeling a little frantic because I've noticed the mowers and the spray equipment approximately 15 miles east of town. My population is 4 miles west of town. And I'm thinking, they're coming. And each day I watched Caltrans get closer and closer. And I went out and I flagged so much flagging all around this population. I probably caused a car accident. So I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be fine. So I start the initial identifications. I grab some specimens, I put them in the plant press. I also grabbed some specimens and I put them in mason jars with water, and I don't have a window in my office, so I put them in a sunny window in my boss's office, and I said, I need you to make sure these don't dry out, because they could be really important. And he said, what do I do? And I said, just tell me, put water in them. We got to keep them alive. So there's a few distinguishing characteristics between the two. They both have toothed leaflets. So I took my specimens and I looked at them and I said, well, it has toothed leaflets. And then the second characteristic was that N. gambili has 300 to 450 reticulations on one side of the seed. And microphyllum has less than up to 175. Now, at the time, I didn't think about how small the seeds were in this particular group of plants, but we'll get to that later. So, okay, there's plenty of other characteristics. So the filaments in gambili are 5 to 7 millimeters, and the filaments in microphyllum are 2.5 to 3.5 millimeters. Well, you can bet mine came out at 4 millimeters. Of course. All right, no problem. There's still petals. So you have 6 to 8 millimeters in gambili, and you have 4.5 to 6 millimeters in microphyllum. They came out at 6. Yeah, why would it come out as anything else? And so this was in June. And I emailed Julie and I said, okay, here's what I have. And we emailed Dr. Al-Shabazz and we say, here's what we have. And everybody says, okay, we need ripe seeds. And I see the green seeds and I see the mowers. And I'm thinking, okay, Caltrans, follow through on this. Please protect those. And I'm going out there every other day and I'm waiting for the seeds to ripen. And the waiting game ensued. And a few weeks went by. The mowers did not mow the population. So I went out and I got some of the ripe seeds and I brought them back and I looked at them and I thought, I have to use a microscope. So if you haven't seen these seeds, I assume most of you are familiar with this group. They're very small, they're like the head of a pin. And I'm thinking, 300 reticulations on one side? So I get out my dissecting microscope and I put it under there and I rig a flashlight up to it from the top because I couldn't get it under my compound microscope. And I'm thinking, okay, and I count. And the first time I counted, I got 80. And I was like, I'm not so sure about this. So I counted again and I got 120 and I basically just kept counting. I had a whole packet of seeds and never once did I find any that had more than 175 reticulations on the side, one side of the seed coat. So I said, okay, I think it's microphyllum. And we took some pictures and I had put a duplicate specimen into the plant press. So this was the initial identification. At this point, I mailed my duplicate voucher to the Missouri Botanical Garden, and we asked Dr. Al-Shabazz to verify the identification of the specimen. So I was invited to speak at this lovely presentation, and I had no idea what I had discovered. So we put together the presentation, we put together the abstract, I had the voucher specimens, I emailed, and no verification on the species. However, here's a map of microphyllum. So this is all put together. So in the first, I'm not even going to push a button on that. In the first map over there, these are all of the states that have known populations. You can see that California does not have a known population in it. However, the closest known population is from a record in 1887, very recent, geologic time, in southern Oregon. And these are the nearest populations that have been documented of microphyllum. Well, last week, I heard from Dr. Al Shabazz at the Missouri Botanic Garden, and he confirmed that it is indeed Nasturtium microphyllum. So it is the first documented occurrence in the state of California. So, how did it get here, we say to ourselves? It's common. These are riparian species. They grow in riparian areas, and it's commonly that they're distributed by bird feet, which is kind of cool, or vehicular traffic, given that it's on the right-of-way. And so this population is currently still there. However, the second population was eradicated last month in a mudslide on the side of Highway 96. So I feel like it's discovery and dispersal and destruction all before my very eyes. Well, I still didn't even know what it was. So here's a copy of the voucher specimen that's in the herbarium at Happy Camp. The other copy has been accessioned into the herbarium at MBOT. One row yellow cress, I think, is the other common name. I just call them all nasturtiums. So here's the picture of the ditch up close of the original finding. I think there's some trash in there and some rocks. So essentially, this is a tale where right in front of us, every day, there's people going right by this spot, and all we have to do is get out and look, and we don't know what we're going to find. And so there's a lot of people purposefully looking for specific things, and there's wonderful groups of people wandering around looking at everything. But it's exciting to know that there are still opportunities where you can get out of your car and find a species that hasn't been documented in this state anytime. So get out of your cars in your rush to figure out your flowers and see what you find. And I do want to extend a special thank you to Julie Kirsten over here. Really, she was the mastermind behind all of this. I was just walking around with my head in the clouds. And then Dr. Isan Al-Shabazz from MOBOT, who verified the final identification. And these two were absolutely instrumental in the final identification of this new species. So with that, I can take any questions.